situation is so clear, the data affirm. If you get vaccinated, you are protected, even with the Delta variant.
We all know already, right, that if you get vaccinated, that vaccine will basically prevent you from getting sick with COVID. It will prevent you from having to go to the hospital with COVID symptoms. It will prevent you from dying from COVID. Great, good for you.
If you're vaccinated, you don't have a risk. And that's the reason why we say it's as simple as black and white. You're vaccinated, you're safe. You're unvaccinated, you're at risk. Simple as that. This is one of the encouraging aspects about the efficacy of the vaccine. It'll either protect you completely against infection. If you do get infected, the chances are that you're going to be without symptoms, and the chances are very likely that you'll not be able to transmit it to other people.
President Biden slamming the social media platforms. NBC's Peter Alexander asked the president what his message is to platforms like Facebook on their handling of COVID disinformation.
They're killing people.
You're not going to work in this particular agency or institution. You're not going to be able to go to this college or this university unless, in fact, you get vaccinated. And I believe that once we start doing that, you will see more and more people willingly get vaccinated.
President Biden signed 2 executive orders yesterday telling employers with 100 or more workers to require vaccines or weekly testing, and requiring vaccines for the vast majority of federal workers and contractors. Francesca, a lot of people have a lot of questions about how this is going to work, but the big one is it's even legal.
Really? Dr. Fauci, do you still support funding of the NIH funding of the lab in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, with all due respect, you are entirely and completely incorrect that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute.
What was made abundantly clear from this hearing was just how fed up and frustrated some public health officials have become with efforts to undermine the public's trust in medical experts. Senator Rand Paul accused Dr. Fauci of lying to Congress about Wuhan lab funding.
Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly, and I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about. I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator. You are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individuals. I totally resent that. And if anybody is lying here, Senator, it is you.
In November 2021, Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla said people who spread misinformation on COVID-19 vaccines are criminals. Criminals. Misinformation. Is misinformation simply to inquire?
These agencies were completely captured, but agency capture on steroids. FDA gets more than 50% of its budget from the pharmaceutical companies. CDC has a $12 billion budget, and $5 billion of that, so almost half, goes to buying vaccines from these companies and then distribute them. So if you work at CDC, you do not get promotions by finding problems with vaccines. You get promoted by increasing uptake.
Do you think that Dr. Fauci used this paper to hide the gain-of-function research created this virus?
It's an inaccurate paper that basically was part of a narrative that they were creating. Remember, this pandemic did not start in January at the seafood market. We now know there was infections all the way back into September. This was a narrative that was decided that they were going to say this came from the wet market, and they were going to do everything they could to support it, to negate any discussion about the possibility that this came from the lab.
Do you think that Dr. Fauci intentionally lied under oath to Senator Paul when he vehemently denied NIH's funding of gain-of-function research?
I think there's no doubt that NIH was funding gain-of-function research.
Is it likely that American tax dollars funded the gain-of-function research that created this virus?
I think it did, not only from NIH, but from the State Department, USAID, and from DOD.
Given what we know now, if you were in Dr. Fauci's position, would you have denied that the NIH's role in gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab?
No.
Do you think that Dr. Fauci lied under oath?
I think that some of Dr. Fauci's testimony is inconsistent with some of the intelligence that we have that remains classified, as well as inconsistent with some information that is publicly available.
A judge in Texas has ruled that the FDA cannot take 75 years to release data about the COVID-19 vaccine, saying they got to make that info public in about 8 months. According to the 4-page order, the 450,000 pages of material that the FDA used when it approved Pfizer's vaccine is of, quote, paramount public importance. Public health and medical professionals for transparency said the data can and should be released quickly because it only took the FDA about 4 months to review that data before granting full approval for the Pfizer vaccine.
And then NIH is just an incubator for pharmaceutical products. So it develops a vaccine, hands them over to the universities, which then get NIH money, $200, $300 million to do phase 2 and phase 1 and phase 2 trials. Then if those are successful, which they always are because they make them successful, they then call in the pharmaceutical company to do a phase 3. And then they all divide up the royalty, the patent margin rights. And then they all go, then Tony Fauci, who's the head of NIH, walks it through the regulatory process at FDA and the CDC, where he's picked the members of the panels who are all taking money from him.
My name is Brooke Jackson. I was fired in September of 2020 for being a whistleblower.
Was the Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market?
Regarding the question around, did we know about stopping immunisation before it entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market. And from that point of view, we had to do everything at risk.
People that won't make money, some of them, by playing with the emotions of these people, are creating a whole conspiracy theory, and they are trying to basically to benefit and profit from this fear of the people. And this is who are the criminals.